I was functioning as a musical diplomat uh, throughout 10 different countries in the Middle East and Central Asia.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them over 50. They are learning bass, having the time of their life playing music that they love. You should come join them so you can experience that incredible transformation for yourself. You're never too old to groove. So let's play bass. My guest this week is Colin Trusedell. Colin is an extremely versatile upright and electric bass player, equally skilled in jazz, fusion, pop, and rock. He's also a prolific writer, arranger, and band leader. Colin's work has been cited in Downbeat, Jazz Times, All About Jazz, as well as several bass publications, including, I don't know, for BassPlayersOnly.com. Colin's got extensive touring experience with the U.S. Navy and Air Force bands. He's appeared on NBC's Today Show, Fox and Friends, The Montel Williams Show, and ESPN's Sports Nation. He runs a national booking agency, My Shows Live, and his own record label, My Shows Live Records. Colin's got a brand new record, speaking of records, his 8th release as a band leader. It's called The Places We're Taken, featuring original compositions. I was reading up about it, and there's a description that says those original compositions were, quote, inspired by the twists that life throws at you, end quote. So I'd like to find out what that's all about, as well as musical flavors from different regions of the world. This is his second time being featured on ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Welcome, Colin. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate it. I want to say thank you for having me on your interview section. I look up to four bass players only for pretty much all things that are going on in our bass community, and you've done such a great job of doing that over the many years. And it's really inspiring to see you kind of keep on going and releasing books and supporting other artists and teaching. And you're also a fantastic bass player. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
Wow. Well, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that very much. I've been listening to your new record, and it's I would describe it as very easy on the ears. There's nothing not to like about it. The places we're taken. Uh, Tell me about the record, how it came about. There was mention of the pandemic. There was mention of military life. So bridge the gaps for me here. What is this record all about? How did it come about, and what were you wanting to say with it?
Yeah. Well, I think that with the pandemic happening, everyone that's a musician, their life had to change. It drastically changed how we do gigs. Basically, everything was just shut down. And during that time, my musical career just kind of tanked because I had a ton of bookings, a ton of clubs that I was booking, a ton of gigs that I had scheduled, and it just overnight went downhill. And I really had a hard time with it. Like kind of, it's kind of like you almost feel defeated as a musician when something like that drastically happens. And then I had a situation where I had a lot of it was a really awful time, like people, grandparents dying and friends committing suicide, and it was just a really grisly time. And then on top of that, I was going through some very serious complications with my military music career. And so it all just kind of stunk, man, to be honest with you. And so this album it's kind of like a resurgence, a kind of like getting back on track after all that has happened. There's a lot of like mental health kind of stuff that happened too with me. And I'm still kind of like working through with all this, and it's very personal. But like the album is kind of a way to kind of get all that out. So like on the album, you'll hear a lot of different music from a lot of different places, which was also inspired by a deployment that I went on last year. And so the deployment was essentially I was functioning as a musical diplomat uh, throughout 10 different countries in the Middle East and Central Asia. And so a lot of the music, you can kind of feel a little bit of that like Middle Eastern kind of flair, but also still kind of contemporary jazz. Um, and then I was lucky enough to be in a place right now where I have just absolutely amazing supportive musicians that played on the album with me. And so I'm in the band of Mid America right now. I have 3 years left until I retire from the Air Force. And then, it's kind of like releasing an album now is trying to just get back on track. Because my last album was in 2020, and it was a solo kind of new age, all on an acoustic bass, but like an acoustic electric. And it was called The Quarantine Chronicles because I basically wrote all the tunes while I was just sitting there on my couch watching my kids watch Frozen. And before that, my the most recent like release as a full band was in 2017. So it's been a while for me, and so like trying to get back on track. So like the places we're taking, it's kind of like the tunes are kind of focusing on that different type of vibe, like, and then also like the feelings that come with different situations that I've been in, like the first tune on the record is called Choices. And I wrote that tune right after I got back from the deployment. And it was just kind of like, you could just feel this type of music coming out. Like when you've been to Bahrain or been to um, Egypt or all these different places I went to, it was just like just kind of flushing it out. Because while I was on the deployment, we were doing basically like cultural music exchanges with different musical groups in different countries. So like when we went to Cairo, I got the opportunity to play with one of the most famous tabla players in the world. His name is Saeed El Artist. And so we did a joint concert with his orchestra of like 40 different people and all these different Middle Eastern Egyptian instruments. And it was just absolutely life-changing, I would say, like as a musician to like hear this and be able to play with these musicians and then kind of bring it back and like, okay, well, how was I impacted by it?
Excuse me, I have to jump in. What was it? Was it tonal? Was it tonic? Was it in 4/4, or was it like, quarter tones, or was did it, how much did it sound like the Western music that we all heard growing up, or how different did it sound?
Not at all. I mean, it sounds like North African music. So the tabla, when you think of a tabla, I always kind of think of it as like maybe an instrument from India where you're
Yeah.
like, doop, doop, boop, 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 boop. But in North Africa, it's basically like in numbers. And they always kind of have like a rhythm where it's like a boom chuck boom chuck boom chuck boom chuck boom chuck boom chuck boom chuck. And so this guy would just it was just amazing. You should go check it out. But basically, he'd have these tablas that don't really look like Indian tablas. They look like North African kind of tablas. And then it was like an orchestra. So they would have high end tablas down to low end, down to like very large like drums. And then they would have like these I don't even know, they're like a mixture between a flute and a soprano saxophone, and then they have like this like and I don't know, like a sitar, and then they have this other instrument that has a bow and it's like one string, and it's really interesting. So
Wow.
being able to like be around that was an extremely cool experience. And so that was as far um west as I went. As far east was Kyrgyzstan. And in Kyrgyzstan, it's a lot different because it's like in Cairo and Egypt and all in that area, it's more of an Arab culture. And then when you go over to Central Asia, it's kind of getting more into like Russian mixed with Mongolian. And so when I went there, we had cultural music exchanges too, where um, it was it was like it wasn't, I don't know what kind of it wasn't a guitar, but it was like this thing that they would play really fast with nylon strings, and they all of them have these certain hats, and there's accordion. It's usually accordion and these interesting guitars that I don't even know the name of them because I don't speak Russian or Kyrgyz. But it was a
They're
very
like
interesting,
a balalaika and a lute if they had a
yeah,
baby.
something like that.
Okay.
And then yeah, like so that was interesting. And then going down to Oman, where we actually worked with a like a social media influencer, and he was a singer, and just the way that they sing in Arabic and the dialect and just the sound of it, it's just crazy. And so you have like lutes and being able to play those, or we went to a lute factory and got to see all these things. And
How many lute factories are there in the whole world?
I don't know. I mean, that's the instrument over there. They don't have guitars or basses or anything like that.
Are
They
you
have
talking about Oman now, or
Oman, yeah. So Oman is on it's the Gulf of Oman there.
yeah?
And the reason why we were in Oman is because Oman is a very rich country that basically controls everything that goes into the Arabian Gulf, which they prefer it to be called the Arabian Gulf over the Persian Gulf. And so all like I forget I think it was something like 90% of the world's oil goes through that and goes past Oman to be dispersed. So it was pretty interesting being able to we played in a mall, and we played a huge concert with um, an Omani influencer, and we rehearsed with him. And so getting all that like musical influence was just a lot, to take in. And it was just pretty interesting. So then I brought it back, and then I was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna do something. I need to put this out here. So that's really what the album is kind of, that's kind of why it's called The Places We're Taken. Sometimes you don't really have a say in where you're taken. And that's, I think, part of like, maturing as you grow older, is trying to find the good in where you're at, and then trying to look towards how you can make yourself better, also how you can hopefully make something that people might enjoy. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I'm thinking about so many different things when I'm listening. First of all, I could take this conversation in a completely different direction, but this is for bass players only, so we need to talk about music and bass. But the places we're taken has like a passive kind of vibe to it. Is there a reason you didn't call it the places we go? I mean, nobody can control the pandemic, but I'm just wondering if that kind of thinking ever entered your mind at all.
I think it's more of, it has to do with, because I'm still in active duty Air Force. And so like I didn't volunteer for the deployment. Um, it was, you go. And then I had an involuntary move from Colorado Springs, where we were at for 11 years, to the middle of the cornfields outside of St. Louis. So it's been a very big adjustment for me and my family. The kids are native Colorado kids. So that's kind of like the theme of it, is trying to like flush out some of the things that have happened, and trying to not be aggressive about it. But yeah, like I feel like that sometimes, the places that I'm just taken. Um, and so that's kind of, and the other dudes in the band, they were along for the journey too. The guitar player, Josiah Joyce,
Yes.
he was my like deployment buddy. We roomed everywhere we went, and so he got the full, experience as well. And then the other two guys are just guys in the band, but they're phenomenal, phenomenal piano player Ben Thompson, phenomenal drummer Tyler Kennemer.
They're not in the military though, but Josiah is.
All through all of us are active duty in the band here at
That's
the
probably
band.
how you know each other, I'm guessing.
Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
we're able to put this together in our off time, which, in between military music gigs, you have free time to go do gigs and whatnot, that kind of thing. But
Wow. Fascinating. You know that the old saying, it's not what happens to you that's important. It's how you handle it and how you respond to it. So in that sense, you're very inspiring with this new record.
yeah,
You mentioned Josiah Joyce. I wanted to mention because I watched one of your videos. I forgot which. I think it might have been Choices, but I'm listening and it sounded like a synth keyboard solo. And I take a look and it's a guitar solo. Great
right.
player, by the way. So I don't know what he was playing through, but that got my attention.
Yeah, he's an effects master and very influenced by Pat Metheny, and as well as all the range of guitar players that that play, and that have played. But yeah, he's like the guitar on this, because I didn't have a sitar or a lute or anything like that, so it was like the guitar was kind of the lead voice for all this whole album. So the guitar takes all the melodies and takes solos throughout. Um, but it was just kind of, that's the way I wish I would have had the ability to pull in one of those guys that play that music, but the language barrier is just so difficult, and then everything that's going on with the Middle East right now, it's just kind of I mean, it always is a little chaotic there, but right now it's pretty heated right now. And then, like, the band that's over there now, they're not really able to go off base a whole lot. Just with the conflicts that are going on. It is what it is.
What about given your schedule and your commitments, are you able to do any touring to promote the record? Is that even a possibility?
It's difficult to do touring. That's why I've been trying to focus much more online, because it's with the Air Force schedule, you only get a certain period of time every year where you can take leave. Like they'll take leave over the Christmas, New Year's, and take leave like during the July break or whatever. So that's why it's a lot more difficult to do touring right now. Once I retire, it's going to be a whole different ball game. I plan on doing a lot of different things. But it's just gonna, I'll be 41 and I'll be retired, which will be nice. So I just
Yeah,
gotta stay the
yeah.
course. Yeah.
Just one word about the military band. I went down to the Detroit Jazz Festival. I used to go pretty often because I grew up outside Detroit. And I forgot who I was going down there to see. I don't know, Dizzy Gillespie or somebody. But one of the bands was the Air Force Men of Note. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought, oh, all right. But it blew me away. I'm telling you, they were fantastic. It's just not what I was expecting. I was kind of ashamed of myself for just kind of shrugging them off. And, all right, well, we've got to see some big band here. Yeah, but they were they were incredible.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I guess, a plug for the Air Force. It doesn't really benefit me or anything because I'll be gone soon. But the Air Force is, or the other branches, they have bands and they always need bass players. So it's not a bad job, especially in the Air Force. I was in a Navy band my first 4 years, separated, did my degrees, and then came back into the Air Force. And it's actually, it pays well. It's got insurance. If you sign up, you get the GI Bill, which I used my GI Bill. I've got about $175,000 worth of education for, I didn't have to pay anything.
Wow.
And so, it's like this earlier this week, I just went to Tampa for a gig and, flew with my Ned Steinberg upright, and then I have a case for it, and then my Mark bass, I've got a case for it. Flew down, did a gig, came back, and then they pay per diem and they pay the flights, they do all that stuff. So I mean, and then the deployment there was some significant challenges and sometimes very stressful situations, and like definitely like what's going to happen here. These guys, and seeing a lot of stuff, but it was a very like enriching experience, something I'll never forget. And, being able to say all these different stories about like going to Beirut in Lebanon and, seeing remember the blast that happened in Beirut, that huge blast. I mean, that place is still not recovered from it. But when we were there in Beirut, we got to play with the Lebanese Air Force band. And so it was just like interesting stuff, like stuff you'll never experience. So I mean that's kind of a thing, for bass players that might be interested in this. I mean, there are some things that are restrictions, like you have to, do a PT test, you have to show up on time, you can't smoke weed right now, but other than that, it's a pretty good consistent job, and you can still gig on the outside. So I have a bunch of stuff coming up in St. Louis, and when I lived in Colorado Springs, all the time. I had my all the gigs and everything. So it's still a good opportunity for someone.
So you're in the US military, but you're not and you're a musician, you're in the band. I this is so foreign to me. I don't know anything about it. Do you have to have any kind of combat training, just in case? I mean, you're in the military, so are you completely, is that a whole different group of guys, or does that include everybody?
Well, typically what happens, especially within the Air Force, is that you, well, let's just use band for example. You go to an audition, you either win it or you don't win it. A lot of times it's very difficult to win an audition because the Air Force they hire kind of directly for a position. And so the competition is pretty significant, and the caliber, generally all Air Force musicians at least have a bachelor's degree. Most of them have masters and some have doctorates. So the field of musicians is very, like, the ability level is very high. So you go to, generally, generally the people that win auditions in the Air Force are people that have already been professionals for a while, and they're, like maybe late 20s, late 30s, all the way up to late 30s, that you can have, sorry, I should have turned off my sound. Um, that they win an audition and then they go through the process of enlisting in the Air Force. Everyone does have to go through basic training, just because you got to get uniforms, you got to learn, okay, well, this is what these ranks mean, and this is how, this is basically what happens. And then once you graduate the basic training, then you go to your band. And then from there, like for instance, the Air Force has about 12 different bands, some on the coast, in the middle, and then a few overseas, one in Germany, one in Japan, one, sorry, I don't know why I'm getting these notifications. Um, but yeah, so and then you can kind of hop around, go to Hawaii for a few years, go to Japan, go to Germany, and then when you're at those different bands, then you go and do all these different tours through, um, wherever, go to Thailand or go to, I mean, I've been to basically the hottest places and the coldest places on the earth through the Air Force. But yeah, like, that's generally it. And then, you can kind of, move through the rank structure. And like right now, I'm an E6. So it's like E1 out of E9. So kind of like a middle manager, essentially. And at when you can retire if you're an E5 or above at 20 years. So I'm an E6, I'm going to retire at 20 years. And then basically how that works is you get 50% of your base pay for the rest of your life, plus free healthcare. Well, it costs a little bit, but it's like, $300 a year for your entire family, and you get insurance. And then if on top of that, if you have any disability claims, like from all the touring and all the gigging and all this stuff, then you stack it on top of it. So the whole model actually works pretty well for a musician if you do it young enough, I think.
All right. I have taken you way off subject here, but I'm just interested in this stuff. I'm just curious, how much interaction do you have with the non-music people?
Hardly any.
Okay. I mean, when you walk by or when they walk by, do you scoff at each other, or is it all camaraderie, or you know?
I mean, a lot of times when you come across somebody that's in a different career field, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I've never met someone in the band, that kind of thing. So
Okay. Let's get back to music. Tell me what else is keeping you busy these days that you haven't already mentioned. Is there anything else musically? You seem to always have a record either in the works or in mind that you want to do, and you like playing as much as possible. We're all kind of sort of pretty much over the pandemic, I think. And we're all looking forward to whatever else lies ahead. So how does that affect you? What's going on with you? What's keeping you busy musically and bass wise?
sure. Well, so the new album is definitely something that's I'm promoting like crazy, and getting support from people like yourself, and then I'm just really trying to just blast it as much as possible, getting it pumped in different countries, not just the United States. And so far it's actually doing pretty well. It's had some recognition in a couple different magazines. It's had a very good response on YouTube. And kind of just continually massaging like the social media platforms, like utilizing TikTok because that's a new thing to like kind of pump on for however long it's
For now,
available.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then Facebook and Instagram and all the other ones. And then beyond that, like, so this is, I kind of, yes, you are right. I always have like kind of like a now, a 5 year, and a 10 year kind of plan, So the next album that I plan on doing is going to be in 2027 when I actually return to Colorado Springs. It's going to be a brand new funk record, all electric, um, with some heavy hitting players out there. And I plan on calling it Funkzilla.
Okay.
And it's going to be all original tunes, and it's going to have horns on it. It's going to be super cool, and I've already started writing a lot of it. And so it's I just want to take my time with it, make sure it's really really solid, and then yeah, that'll be coming down the road. I also have a couple of different projects with some singers here. So I have the Air Force band I play with. We're just a quartet right now, but it's kind of upright bass, acoustic guitar, and kind of like a whittled down drum set, and then a really talented singer. But we've been working on doing some stuff on the outside of the military, and it's basically like some very interesting versions of covers, but in a way that you'd never expect them. And so that's something. And then I've also been working with a trumpet player who's also a vocalist, killer vocalist in St. Louis. Her name is Dawn Weber, and we have a bunch of gigs coming up here soon. She's kind
I
of
know
like,
that name. Did
oh
we
yeah,
you went to University of Miami, didn't you?
yeah, you and I did.
Yeah, I don't think we were there at the same time, but
No, no,
I'm
no.
trying to think where I know the name Dawn Weber from. Is she an alumna?
I'm. I don't think she went. She didn't tell me that she went to the University of Miami, but she's like a St. Louis mainstay. She's so there's a bunch of really kind of well-known clubs in St. Louis that she's got several gigs at coming up. And so that's been kind of cool. And then, you know, just uh just normal, just chugging along, man,
Yeah.
same old stuff.
I was reading up your the last interview, which was what 2015, I think. You mentioned University of Miami. You mentioned Chuck Bergeron. I was a student with him. We were there at the same time. And you mentioned Nicky Orta. I still keep in touch with him right now. Was he on the faculty there when you were
Yeah.
there?
Hmm.
Okay. And Don Kaufman. I don't know if you're aware. Don
Yeah.
left us a couple of years ago. He was 82 years old, I think. But I learned an awful lot from him. Just great memories from University of Miami. Speaking of learning music and studying music, for bass players only, as you know, is a bass instruction site. And I've got people right now from pretty much every state in the US and I think around 50, 60 countries worldwide last time anybody counted. And most of the people that are coming, I don't know if you noticed, I said a lot of them are over 50. Most of the people are over 50, mostly men, but we're getting more women now too. and I have students in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got students in their 80s. And they're not looking to make a career out of music. They want to get together and play some classic rock riffs with their buddies. They want to play some blues shuffles. They want to play some, maybe walking bass or a little funk R&B. Some of them are into slapping. And a lot of times when you get to be in that age range, things like arthritis and tendonitis and those kinds of things creep in. So I'm telling you all this just to give you a context, because I want to ask you, now that you know who we're dealing with, what kind of advice can you impart to somebody like that who wants to learn bass? What should they be thinking about? What kind of goals should they have? What kind of questions should they ask? Just that kind of thing. Jump in anywhere.
Okay. Well, I actually had, I think part of, where I'm at, and while the pandemic was going on, I had, I was on a lot of tours, and I remember I was on a tour in New Mexico, and I was holding up this speaker on a lift, and I went to go like this to hold it, and my neck just went like a pop, and I could not turn my neck further than this. And so what had happened, and I'm still dealing with this, I have three bulging discs in my neck now from all these tours and a lot of other things. But what for a bass player, what this did, where they're at, it's like C456. It runs down to these two digits on my right hand. So
Wow.
what happened is it was in 2016, 17. I basically lost the ability to go do 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 as and so basically I can't go any faster than that. So I lost pretty much all of my speed. And so what I had to do, I didn't know what to do at all. Like, but then I started researching, and I came across Bobby Vega.
I know.
And if you ever seen him play,
I
he
had dinner
plays,
with him months ago.
yeah, he plays with his thumb and his first fingers sometimes. And so like
He's known
sometimes,
for being a pick guy, though.
yeah, well, yeah, he does that too. So he does it with the pick, but then he also I've seen him to where he's doing like, first finger and thumb. And
Interesting.
so basically what I had to do is I had to relearn how to play. And so now a lot of times I can still play like this, and it doesn't impact upright as much, but it's still there. But on the electric bass, I'll play do 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 do. And it's actually significantly more efficient, and I can achieve higher speeds like that. So you can see like my thumb, I have a callus there, and then my finger, so it's like do 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 do. So all like the kind of Jocko like it's just much easier to flow like that, and it's almost like you're like a chicken picking country guitarist,
What
but you
about changing strings, though? When you're playing on going from the G string to the E string or the A
right.
string?
So basically, I just had to relearn all my scales and just completely rework everything. And
Wow.
so it worked. I don't have a bass right now, but you can kind of watch some videos of me online. You'll be able to see it in action. But that's something that happened after, if you have bulging discs and you can't really get enough speed where you want with just two fingers. And it takes a little while, but if you start like researching kind of like chicken picking guitarist or chicken picking bass, that's what it is. And it sounds pretty cool. And that's kind of it will be a feature on that funk record.
Wow. All right. I think what you're getting at is a lot of times we have physical challenges, and sometimes, not always, but there may be a workaround. Is that?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got one student that's got that had shoulder surgery. So instead of giving up on the bass, he holds it a little bit differently, and he I think he adjusts the strap. I've got another student that was born with his pinky curved in, and he managed some kind of workaround for that as well. I have a couple interesting interviews with a guy named Randy Kurtz, Dr. Randall Kurtz.
Oh, I know him. Yeah.
He's a chiropractor, he's an acupuncturist, and he's a bass player. And he's talked a lot about the kind of the very thing we're talking about. He said even guys that like Christian McBride and Victor Wooten, there's nothing wrong with them, but everybody has to make an adjustment. Not everybody can hold the bass and play the bass exactly the same. So sometimes we have to accommodate, even if there's not a surgery or a sprain or a physical abnormality. So I thought that was fascinating.
I
Um,
actually got a little bit of ideas from Dr. Kurtz about this whole situation.
he's the
Um,
man. He's the one.
yeah, I had to go through a significant amount, and I still have to go through like the chiropractor every 2 weeks or so just to, get things back together. And that's where, like, that's the good thing about being in the military and having it all documented is when I retire, I plan on submitting a serious disability claim for all these different things. I have a shoulder tear from carrying my upright on the bus, it's like, um, but then, it's just a lot of stuff, but it just is what it is.
Any other advice
Well, yeah,
for
I was gonna say because I haven't taught. I taught for a long time, not as long as you, and not nearly of the amount of like breadth of experience and all the students that you have. But I taught for a little while, and I think that I we had kids, and all my patients could not go to the students, and I felt like I wasn't giving them my all, so I had to stop teaching. But when I was teaching and had some students that were like 60 years old or like a lieutenant colonel that wanted to just play bass in his off time, they wouldn't really dig getting into like all the nuts and bolts of theory or all like the technical approach of things. And so I just kind of like give them a little bit of like, here's some technical approaches, but then YouTube is your best friend, man. So I've compiled, because I practice a lot still, I've compiled all these playlists from different YouTube content creators that all they do is just put out tracks without bass. And so you just go on there, and I'm sure you've seen them where you go on there and I want to play um, classic rock like the Beatles, no bass, and then it's just a backing track, and it's basically like follow the bouncing ball on the screen for the chord change. So that's something that to help people with that are if they're running out of things and ideas to practice with.
Well, they're very lucky that you compiled that, because when you say YouTube, my first reaction is one of alarm or trepidation, at least, because truthfully, everything you need or everything that you could want to use to help you learn bass is on YouTube somewhere. But there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube and there's a lot of really bad stuff on YouTube. And it just takes so much time to go through and search and find something and test it and see if it works. And maybe it does and maybe it doesn't. Then go and find something else and see if that works. So that's what my site solves. So you don't have to spend hours and years going through all that stuff. I've got a pretty good track record. I've got, close to 140,000 people that have learned from me. So I think I'm a trustworthy source. But when you say YouTube, I say, yeah, it's there, but be careful. So I just wanted to make sure to.
There's one guy that you should, I mean, you could maybe even reach out and create a partnership with this guy. He's from Australia. It's called Ben's Jam Tracks, and he's a very good composer. He composes all these different tracks, and then he'll do like no bass or no piano or no drums. And the cool thing about his videos is that it's instead of just being like just a chord that flashes, it's actually like measures, like you're reading the sheet music along with it, with like rhythmic figures tied in, accurate chords. I mean, it's like it would be probably something for you to like tie up.
Already got that. I've got that on all my lessons. First of all, there's a fast demonstration and a slow
Oh
demonstration.
yeah, I've seen those.
It's right underneath and scrolls. And underneath that, there are two audio backing tracks, one with a full band, including bass, and one with everything but the bass. And they're variable speed also. So if you want to slow them down or speed them up. So I've got all that.
Awesome. I need to get that's on. Do I have to sign up for that?
There are some free resources there. Just go to forbassplayersonly.com.
Okay.
Happy to help. Um, I want to ask you quickly about gear. You mentioned Ned Steinberger. Are you an NS Design artist?
No, I have, I mean, I only use that when I have to. I actually play on this new album. I have a, it's not a brand new, it's brand new to me, but it's a 1973 copy of John Patitucci's Pullman Bussetto.
Okay.
And it's really nice bass. I really like it a lot. And I'm kind of like a Pullman person now. Nowadays, I have a Pullman Emperor for my Air Force stuff, which is a huge bass, 30-inch lower bout. It's like, it's a little bit bigger than a 7/8 size. It's huge. And then the Pullman Bussetto that I have is like a three-quarter size bass, but it's really nice bass. I am a Roscoe bass endorser.
Waiting for that because you mentioned that last time in the interview. You talked about it a lot. What Keith Roscoe, right? Is who you deal
Yeah,
with?
I still love, my Roscoe basses. They're still great. You can't really, I mean, it's just his low B is just so fantastic. So controlled. Um, and that's what I've used on a lot of my electric records.
Talking
Uh,
5 string or 6 string?
five string. I had one made about 11 years ago that I still have. It's called the Coco Bolo Beauty, and it's got exhibition grade Coco Bolo body, exhibition grade Coco Bolo fretboard, gold hardware, Bartolini pickups. I mean, the whole deal. I actually have another bass that was made for me, electric bass, and you might be very interested in this. He's a bass maker out of Colorado Springs, and it's called Talon Guitars. His name is Brandon Stroy, and he's going to be kind of coming onto the scene hopefully a little bit. He uses like fish trick pickups in his basses, and then he makes
Trickfish.
what does he say?
Trickfish, you mean?
Trick? Yeah, what did I say?
I think you had a fish trick, I
Right,
think.
sorry, trick fish.
Trickfish.
Trickfish Electronics. Um, and he just got these really beautiful basses that are, just kind of like um, exhibition kind of like pieces. And I really like the bass that he built for me. And then, of course, you got the standard Fender jazz bass but and I have a custom made Cliff Boardwell bass that I really like. It's a fretless, one of the best fretless I've ever played.
What
And
kind
then
of
I'm,
strings do you use? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
what?
interrupt. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You were going to mention another bass?
Oh, well, I was gonna go on. I'm a Mark bass guy all the way. I love Mark bass. Just because between the upright and the electric, I can always dial in something that sounds really good. Um, and I've had like big Mark bass stuff, small Mark bass stuff, and it just always works really well. It also travels really well too. Like just from like a gig from the car to the back door, you might get dinged here and there, but it's still going to be good. Then you can fly with them in a case. They're really great.
What kind of strings do you play?
I'm exclusive Elixir.
Hmm.
I've been exclusive Elixir for like, I don't even know, close to 20 years.
What about on the upright?
On the upright, exclusive to Mastic Spiracore Vikes.
Bikes, the purple wraps.
Yep. And exclusive Fishman Full Circle. I've tried them all. I've tried all the pickups, and I just love the Fishman. Even like the Wilson, all those other ones. Like all the realist ones. I've always come back to Full Circle.
Yeah, that's a good company. I know those guys, and I've interviewed a lot of people that use Fishman, and they swear by it. They
What
love
do
it.
you use?
I have an Underwood, and I don't really have a lot of need for it, but back in the days when I was gigging a lot, I had a Polytone like 40 years ago. Didn't really like it, and then Don Underwood sent me his pickup, and there's a guy in somewhere out Connecticut, I think, sent me a what's his name? Up from Upton Bass. You know that
Yeah.
place?
Hmm.
Yes. So I have one of his pickups as well. But yeah, I'm my days of dragging around the bass and doing jazz gigs. If I have it, I used to do a lot of theater, and you don't need it for that because they just put a mic in front of it. So
Right.
that's why I had to think for a second. Um, what about? I do have one more question. I don't think I asked you last time. What would you be if you were not a bass player? Something outside of music.
I have, well, so that's the thing too, like coming up on retirement in 3 years. Like I don't really want to have like a job, you know? And so I have started to kind of diversify what I do. I really enjoy cooking, but I really only enjoy cooking for like my family, you know? So like I don't think I really want the stress of cooking for a restaurant or something like that. But what I've also done is I've basically um, started being a property manager for my family's different properties.
I'd rather have the stress of being a chef than being the stress of being a property manager. But
I really enjoy that. So it was in 2021, and my grandfather had died. My grandmother was in a nursing home, and everyone was out of state. She was in Florida, and I was like, "Well, Grandma, what can I do? What can make things better?" And she's like, "More visitors." So like at that time, I was like, "Okay, well, how can I make this happen?" So I I had like $100,000 budget, and I bought a house down in Fort Myers, and I turned it into an Airbnb. And so, like the 70 grand was in like a down, the like the what do you call it? Down payment. Yeah. Then about $10,000 in upgrades and like and fixes and repairs, and then another 20 grand in like like I got cool couches and TVs and all this stuff, and it's a really hip place now for my family, all my brother and sister and their families, and my parents to go. And so she died about a year later, but it was used for that, and then now it's just continually been going. And then I turned their house into a rental property. And so now both the houses are paid off. And so I get kind of, paid through that from the rents. And then I have a house here in St. Louis and then a house in Colorado Springs. And the house in Colorado Springs is the one we're going to go back to. And so that's kind of been a thing of just doing like rental and property management, which I do enjoy. Um, I don't really do a lot of the fixes and stuff. I just like have my people, hey Frank, will you help me out? Can you go over to the house and you know t figure out what's wrong with the garbage disposal? But it's kind of fun because it's always consistent. There's always something probably going wrong.
yeah,
Uh,
well, that first place my mind went was complaints and people not paying rent and students trashing the place. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of like the screening process and stuff. So I've learned a lot about this whole thing, and like I'm going through a rental application process for my house in Colorado Springs because guy's moving out. So that is actually where I've ditched the property manager in Colorado, and I'm actually doing it fully myself. So this is kind of a testing the waters kind of thing, but it's also like, doing something bigger than just playing music.
There you go. All right. Well, you never know what's going to come up in these conversations, all kinds of different directions. But it's great catching up with you and hearing your story. I could ask you so much more about all kinds of stuff that we brought up, but I think we're going to have to leave it there. The record is called "The Places We're Taken." Colin Trusedell, thanks so much, and good luck with the retirement. I think that 3 years are going to go by pretty fast, so I'm very happy for you. Congratulations, and thank you for all your service.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate all your support.
It's my pleasure. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them over 50, and they are learning bass having the time of their life playing music that they love. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself. You're never too old to groove, so let's play bass. Thanks again to my special guest, Colin Trusedell. I'll see you all next week right here, same time, same place. In the meantime, let's play bass.